Okay, so I've finished up a second slash third probably pass at this hole, and I think I'm good enough to move on to another one at this point. So as you can see, we've planted up here. It's, to be honest, on this version, it's more kind of background stuff rather than things that grab your eye, but there's enough little colour there if you choose to look for it, and we can come back and do some of the detail stuff later. The bunkering here, this one shrunk. I didn't like how it was leading your eye out this way, and I couldn't get it to sit integrated with the fairway as well. But it kind of leads your eye a little bit as to that bunker string, which works nicely. The other thing that I changed was I didn't love this second bunker running up so high. It was creating this kind of horizontal line, which is something I don't tend to love. Now what I love is those two bunkers are really giving you a visual of how severe that slope from left to right is. That's also allowed me to recontour the green a little bit and make it much more kind of that way. And I think that produces a slightly different sort of challenge. You've got a big runoff to the right of the green, which is somewhere where it's not necessarily you don't want to be, but it would make you think. And it's all about where you want to be controlling that approach shot. So whilst we've lost that little kind of, I guess, tongue of green around a bunker, which was a nice feature, I didn't feel I was using it to its maximum anyway, and I think this will do just as much. Other than that, redone the tree line just around this side. And the other thing that I can't remember if I did on the video or not is looking at how it works in different lighting. Now, 9 AM, which we're looking at this morning lighting, it's going to be next to no problems. I mean, there's no shadows on the green, the bunker's still getting sunlight, this will look just fine. However, on the 3 o'clock one, it was a little bit more challenging. I had to move some trees in order to just get the green in sunlight, and you get a few little bits coming through to the bunkers. So I think this now works. This will be one of the most challenging holes because it's just always got trees directly in front of the green, but you can get creative with it because it still looks pretty wooded here. It's just how you allow the light to filter through. So that's one thing that I'm really wanting to consider on this one as well. But then standard lighting will look a little bit like this. Got our people nicely lining the first fairway. There are people here. I don't know why they're not showing up. They do when you play test the hole. So it's just a bit of an odd one. So yeah, I figured I would finish by just playing the hole once. We're going to go with high. Let's go with southwest. Why not? And let's go for pin 3. Can't remember which any of the pins are, but here I figured I could point out any things that I see from here that I might want to tweak. I think the bunkers are showing kind of the way I'd want them to. I don't love that this isn't heavy rough, so that may just get painted green. And then maybe this side looks a touch empty. We could put a stand or something there as well, or like concessions would probably be a good idea. Oh, dead into the wind. And then when you turn, I think that's a good look into the green. Oh, it's this pin. Fun. Okay, well, I think given the elevation change, we're just going to go for a 3-wood up the middle. Now, I would want this to be on a significant side slope. Oh yeah, I've got my lie turned off for some reason. Always good. There we go. Yeah, so I think this area of the fairway, I want to decide what I'm doing with this bit. I'm not totally sure whether I want a stock 3-wood to be rewarded with the flat lie from a half-decent angle. But it's nice to have one spot, I guess. And it does make you lay a little bit further back, and it's not exactly an easy shot. So I don't know if I totally mind it, but I just want to think about what I want. I quite like this bunker and the way it's kind of folding in on itself. That is interesting. I will probably open up a little bit more of the sightline to this one, but it's quite hard given what this part of the fairway is going to be doing, so it may not be possible. As for the shot, just don't be long, don't be short, don't be right. That's going to be somewhere on the green, unless it rolls off. Okay. So we have some severity that we're going to want to sort, which is fine. That's what playtesting is for. Slightly better shot, but the slow means we're going to miss right. What do you have here? And that's definitely a challenging chip shot. As you can see, the green is extremely severe at this point. I'd rather start at this point and then work back from that. Yeah, it's harder to make sculpting it more extreme, I find, later on. But all we're trying to do with this is get an idea of how the green plays generally. Okay, so if you hit into the middle, is it going to hold somewhere? No. So we're too severe at this point, which is fine. And certainly I would want that to be staying in fairway as well. One more go. So I'd hope, yeah. So that one does stick, but still leaves you with a nasty part. Extremely nasty. Yeah. Certainly not an easy first hole. I don't think the green is far off, or at least not as far off as it looks, but it definitely needs some toning down. So there you go. Gives you an idea of the first hole, where we've gotten to with this one, what we've been doing. I've also sorted out the range and kind of planted this tree line a bit more densely. And as you can see, it hasn't taken up too much meter, so I kind of feel okay at about the meter at this point. Hopefully that was interesting. See you again soon. Since you were last with us, one has kind of been finished up. I think I showed this last time. And I've also done a lot with two as well. So one now looks like this. The main big difference, I would say, to the course is I've started introducing the autogen trees, and that's mainly meter related. We were at 85%. I thinned out some properties as well, a grandstand here or there. So now down to 85, but with let's have a little look. I've got half of two, well, not quite half, but bits of two still to plant, which I'll show you in a second. The whole of 15, 14, 10, the coastline of 7, which actually isn't going to take that much, 17 and 18. So we're right up against it in terms of what we're doing and kind of how much detail I can really bring to this. Now, if I need to, I can always lose a couple of the ticket buildings, but they kind of don't take up all that much. The main thing is going to be going around and thinning out trees and or grandstands. So it'll be things like this, like rather than having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them in here, we reduce that down to 3 and just do it more efficiently. So I know I can pick out some, giving you an idea, for example, I know I can take out quite a bit by just getting rid of those. And that's probably going to go down at least 1%. Yeah, decent amount. You can see it's already considering getting to 84. So that'll be the thing that I really start limiting. And the autogen trees actually do work out just fine in the background. It's just they can't be the first part of the tree line. So I can probably thin out some of these as well and be a bit more efficient with how we're doing that. As for what we've done since you were last here, 2 is now kind of fleshed out. There's a little bit more planting needed, but basically it's a par 5 with options. So this hill kind of hides the right-hand side of the fairway, which gets you a preferential angle to attack the green. Sculpting needs to be finalised, but it's enough to give me an idea. And I'm not doing this part because this is going to be very dependent on the conditions that I set. So I kind of want to come back to this bit of planting later. But you could lay up here all day long and make it a 3-shot hole. You can play here, you can reach in 2. You can play way out here, but then that makes that second shot more challenging. You can take on here and get a shorter shot, but the idea is going to be that that's really risky. And the fairway is going to kind of cut in and out around the Barranca and be a bit more ragged than maybe it normally is. As you can see, I've added a bit more fairway this side, just so you land on the fairway but have this big slope kicking you that way. Because the angle you're playing into this, you are going to stay on this fairway and it will stop. Like that's part of what we're playing with as well. As for the second shot, I think it's a lot of fun. You get good options into the green. I really like the green complex and the way it sits. I haven't really changed the green sculpting all that much yet because I like the pocket this little one sits in. Same with here. This is going to be one of my favourite pins on the course because it's just really dicey if you leave the ball above the hole or below the hole in certain situations. Like you've got to be careful with it. This one's more kind of like that glamour pin. And then the front one, it's really using this slope to defend it. I guess I could put one up here tucked behind those bunkers as well. Might be an option. But with most of the greens, I've got 5 positions that I kind of like, and it's just whittling them down, working out what we're doing. If you do lay up, you want to be thinking about flatter portion, so here, versus how much that slope's going to affect you. Will you stop down here? That sort of thing is what I want you to be thinking of. If you lay up over here, you can get an angle into some pins, for example, this one, but you want to be careful, a little centerline bunker, how you're rolling through here, etc., etc. And I think it fills out quite nicely from 16 as well, so it's good to see that there. As you can see, we still have some autogen stuff that I haven't totally cleared, so let's get rid of that now. So that's where we're at now. Now, as for this episode and what we're going to do, first part was kind of reflecting and like working out where we're at with spacing. I've thinned out some of the houses around here as well. Might be able to do a bit more of that and replace with autogen trees, but I'd like to have a few peeking through a little bit as well. The hole we're going to look at today is going to be 14. The reason being that I've done quite a lot of this stretch, and I feel like I want to get the coast relatively done, as that's the bit that's got to shine. And getting 7 and 14 done together will be nice. I also have a pretty strong vision for this hole and want to execute this one, and then it's whether you go back and tweak other holes in light of that. So this one, you have a high plateau up here, is what the land is kind of suggesting for me. You have a little bit of a spine that's going to filter a tee shot from here down to about here, which gives an approach angle. You can try and work it down to here, which gives a better angle for certain pins as well, and a shorter distance. You can lay up here, but kind of if you're anywhere around about here, it's dicey. I do also want the risk of running through into heavy rough, not into rocks and off the cliff, but into rough from a downslope around about there, I think would be interesting, and something a little bit different. I did toy with some bunkers around here, but I think maybe not. As for the green, I think that's kind of most interesting part. It sits on some really cool land. We're going to keep this kind of false front because that's an interesting angle depending on where you approach it from. And also I like the way it works with that land movement. Bunkers, very much placeholder. They're going to take a ton of time as well. I guess the question at this stage for me would be, it's been a while since I've looked at this one. Are there any things I might want to do differently? I want to pop the green down here, for example. I could do, but I feel like that's quite a high tariff shot. I also feel like I want to save that real precipice green site for 18 as well. And I like the way this one sits. It's a little bit of an ode to 8 at Pebble Beach, purely in where the green site is, and a little bit of the tee shot in that you can kind of hit a bit too much. But that's basically where we're going with it. Okay, so those last little bits of playtesting, you've started seeing me do the green a little bit more, and also trying shots from different sides of the fairway, and you can see how much the angles have to be exaggerated. So I was kind of a little concerned that I might have overdone it with this one, but hitting that last shot, like from this side of the fairway, that pin is not inaccessible. You can get to here, as you saw, like that's doable and have an uphill putt, but going straight at it is requiring a really, frankly, stupid shot. Now, one thing I might do is just exaggerate and give a little bit more of a landing room here, just to tempt people to try that. I don't love the fact that this full side is so, I guess, linear, for lack of a better word. But what I really did like was when I really hugged this bunker, I ended up down here and I had that shot around the corner, and you could use this slope to feed the ball in. That's the sort of thing that I really need to be hitting with this course. Now, what we're going to do is play test another couple of pins, see how those go, because I like this section of the green. I think the rest of it is all very much work in progress. One of the things you'd have seen is kind of plotting how the ball, or how like water comes off the green and how the sloping works. I could make it just really simple, like everything goes this way, and that's still very much an option. Like you leave the ball below the hole, you take on this front, but I kind of want to tempt you to go at the back bunkers a little bit as well. You've got this pin that's tucked just over that bunker. So, yeah. And I quite like the idea of having a pin in a bowl as well. Like, I don't want it to be complete, like, punch you in the mouth again and again and again. Because I think if I give you a pin in a bowl, well, then you might take off a little less risk off the tee and see if you can get there with a longer club. So, I think rudimentarily, the sculpting's kind of where I want it to be. But it's going to require a lot more playtesting, care, like making the big features that we've got that I think do work, making those look about right. Bunker's very much placeholder for the moment in terms of shapes. I think this one needs to be a bit bigger, but I think they're necessary to stop you just hitting up here with complete impunity. Part of what that probably means is I need to expand that shelf, that high portion out a little bit more. And as you can see, there's like a landform that this could tie into. You've got a bit of a ridge line coming off here, so we can work with that as well. So yeah, that's this little bit done. The only other thing that I found was when I did go through the fairway, it actually became much harder than I thought to reach over here. So we're just going to give you a little bit more fairway to use short of the green, just so that you can try to run it up. I think the other part I might do is cutting off the false front around about here. That generates a little bit of an angle through. Even if you are playing a running shot, you can still get there and you don't necessarily need to take that on in its entirety. Again, kind of choices to be made sort of stuff. obviously got a crash when starting to record this, but that will wrap up this episode. I think crash-wise, we're in the 70s comfortably now. I'm getting loads of them. Fortunately, saving all of the time, so the only thing I lost was these measure tools, which I've just drawn out again. Now, as for what it is that we're going to look at with this hole, I'm kind of happy with how it's coming together. I think it's an interesting kind of mid-4 that's going to play longer. You saw that you could play to this kind of high plateau and hit a 3-iron into even that pin, which I think is an interesting shot that like is quite high tariff, but was really cool to play. And this will force that kind of aerial long iron approach if you choose to play for the high side. Whether we'll use that wind, not sure. And there's been a couple of holes where I've looked at this kind of high plateau, low area, and there's only so many ways you can use camber. And when you've got coastal holes, it's going to lend itself to this sort of like low sides on the inside, high sides on the outside. So if you think about how the sculpting works, it would be very odd to have this the other way around. That said, I like the green complex. You can see how we've gone about it from going kind of rough, rudimentary fairway shape first, then putting some bunkers in, then kind of adjusting the sculpting, then readjusting the fairway shapes. It's kind of all an iterative process and you change as you go, rather than just chucking down that first shape and yep, that's it. I did end up going with this bunker in the end just because in large part these two I don't think you're going to be able to see. If I could make them visible, I'd lose a lot of the sculpting I want, on both on the fairway and in the bunkers. So it's quite nice to have something in front of them for a start. And also I think it frames pretty nicely. And it's going to save on planting, so lots of benefits. The one thing I'm looking at with this one is, well, if I've done this idea here, do I need to do something slightly different elsewhere? And a good candidate for me is going to be 8. 8 is one I'm not sold on currently as is. We've got this high, particularly as it's high right side, low left side. You've got the Barranca. Could I be using that a little bit more creatively rather than just having all of this empty space? And then with that, later on will come a conversation about how much do I love 9? Do we want to tie those two holes together? Stuff like that. And all of that stems from like, is this the best area for this idea? And if so, do you want to do something else somewhere else? Bunkering around the green, it's come together pretty nicely. I'm not 100% on the two behind the green. I don't think those shapes are working quite as well as I'd like. But I love the sculpting of these two and how they kind of blend out of the hillside, and in behind the green. I'm loving the kind of slightly sunken but low green, but then high this side as well. I had the pleasure of playing a Mackenzie course very recently, so I kind of got to see some of that bunkering close up. And whilst I'm not going to nick all of it, there's certainly bits I will take. Sculpting here is not finalised. You saw me play test and we're still rolling through to the light rough, which I don't love, but I'll get it working sooner or later. Or you'll just roll into the light rough and that's fine. And then you've got big visual bunker here. And then it's just going to be a case of going around doing the coastline, etc. And I think this one will pan out pretty nicely. So generally, fairly happy with that. What I'm probably going to do next is just spend a lot of time doing some more testing, checking, and then likely go around the coastline a little bit and yeah, get this a bit further along, and then we go into conversations about whether we keep it. That'll be this episode then, I think. Hopefully, as ever, interesting, and you kind of find the thought process useful. This one was one where I had a pretty good idea from the start, and it hasn't really deviated from that. It was just about getting things working in the right way. And whilst this fairway sculpting isn't there yet, it's close enough that I think I've got some stuff I'm finding interesting. It will take a lot of polishing, but yeah, it's good enough to give me an idea that the shot values that I want for getting to there is still pretty high tariff. You have to take on this bunker and not run out of fairway this way, or getting to there we have to kind of cut the corner and roll out, but not too much, that sort of stuff. Oh yeah, and I needed to get more side slope. That's the other thing. So yeah, I think there's interest, there's options, and there's a load of short grass, which are things that I quite like. And it's a cool use of coastline. It's a different style coastal hole than I would have normally done. So yeah, hopefully interesting. See you again soon.